And the third of these short poems, the sonnets, is about his late book, The Gift. And he makes the same point there, that in some sense, a gift can only be more than what is owed or what is one is obliged to give by way of recompense or of due reparation. And yet at the same time, the power of giving can't be unlimited. To give in a kind of insanely generous, hyperbolic way is in a way to over-obligate the person you're giving to. So it's creating a kind of threat. It's putting them in their place. So Derrida says, this is the epigraph again, for there to be a gift, there must be no reciprocity, return, exchange, countergift, or debt. For there to be a gift, it is necessary that the donee not give back, amortize, or reimburse. This one is not a sonnet, but a villanelle. Villanelle's a very tight rhyme scheme with repeated refrains.
I'm sorry, Chris. Are you reading The Gift now?
I'm reading The Gift, yes.
All right. Okay. Just to get up the right poem on the screen right, here, okay. But yeah. do carry on. Carry on, please.
Okay. Yeah. So repeated refrains, very musical verse form, but it can also be made quite complex by changing the tone and the emphasis of the words in the repeated line. That's what I tried to do. What's in our gift has naught of giving's grace. No gift but drives the donor to excess. Give faster, give big time, lest you lose face. Just trading gift for gift won't hold the pace when rivals are up trading more for less. What's in our gift has naught of giving's grace. Spend within means and you'll have quit the race. Just blow the lot, no time to second guess. Give faster, give big time, lest you lose face. That double entry stuff won't help your case when balanced books find no one to impress. What's in our gift has naught of giving's grace. Where spendthrifts speed, the thrifty must give chase, or raise the stakes with all that they possess. Give faster, give big time, lest you lose face. Potlatch, not potluck. Here the winner's place is theirs who take most risks with least redress. What's in our gift has naught of giving's grace. Yet its gifts offered in that hyperspace beyond all recompense, that the gods bless. Give faster, give big time, lest you lose face. Then you'll give more than's good for you. Embrace the supererogatory and stress. What's in our gift has naught of giving's grace. Give faster, give big time, lest you lose face. I'm so fond of that verse form because it's so musical. The next one is the Hedgehog title poem. This takes its inspiration from an essay of Derrida's, in some way a very untypical essay. It's a short piece, originally written in Italian, Derrida's text, then translated into French and into English. And he was asked to write what is poetry, to write on the theme, what is poetry? And instead of writing a very philosophical, complicated, reflective piece on it, he really rotated a metaphor, the idea of the poem as a hedgehog. A hedgehog in the sense that poems can be tightly self-enclosed. They can be formal, turned in on themselves. They can be private and elusive, and they can withhold their meaning from every comer. On the other hand, they can be prickly. They can survive against the odds, like a hedgehog on the roadway. So he wrote this essay, really exploring the implications and the resonances of that image of the poem as a hedgehog. I won't read the epigraph because it's rather long. He's fascinated, by the way, by the fact that poems mark occasions. They needn't speak about the occasion, but the fact that a poem is dated, it may be actually dated on the page. It may say, Venice 1929 or something. But even if it doesn't say that, even if scholars have to hunt around for the place and the occasion of its writing, it is still a mark of an experience, if perhaps only the experience of writing it, but very often a much larger, more resonant background experience. So this is kind of experiment, really. It's 6-line stanzas with a different rhyme sound in each line. So the effect is, or at least I hope it is, cumulative. You get to recognize the sounds, the rhyme sounds as they come around. A witness born, a signature event, inscribed and dated, yet required to take its chance with every comer, every phase of a reception history set to spill its inmost secrets, speak the cryptid name, or draw biographers to peek and pry. No autograph, no care to say what's meant, can save it from the next unlucky break. The poem Hedgehog bound to spend its days in search of some dark hiding place until night falls and traffic, like unwanted fame, brings headlights streaked across a hostile sky. What refuge from the life threats they present, the scholar's slip, the copyist's mistake, the critic's faulty ear, or all the ways we find to smooth the hedgehog's bristling quill, or proffer theory nostrums, fit to tame that prickly shape crouched at the next cat's eye. A nightly cull, a routine accident, like the first drafts dug out for promotion's sake, lines garbled, clumsy shots at paraphrase, translations botched, and all those overkill techniques to deal with poems lest they shame or prick the conscience of some driver-by. So curious too, the ways around they went to do it, like the hare that raced to shake the hedgehogs off, that pair of them who'd crazed their panting pursuivant by standing still at start and finish lines, so he became, in time, the one to tire, collapse, and die. Don't fret about authorial intent, Grimm's tale suggests. If certain poems make the kind of long-run creature sense that plays by rules resistant to the poet's will, since wagered on an auto-dodging game that's worth it only if the odds stack high. So many obstacles to circumvent, and so few fragile shibboleths to stake against the quick traversal that betrays each living poem to the culture mill set up, like roads and rogue events, to maim or crush what's braced to bristle and defy. No poem knows how far afield it's sent, who'll read it, or what passions it might wake in maybe just one reader, she who pays the sort of rapt attention that may thrill to hedgehog sightings far beyond the frame imposed by guides with route maps to supply. Poems are vagrant creatures and frequent a netherworld where blinding headlights snake across their path, while each near miss relays the message, keep it up, that night watch drill, you whose myopic vision begs you claim a view no bird or plane can overfly. Poem as Hedgehog. Label it my bent for catachrestic figures that cry fake at all placating strategies and raise their spines against all poems that fulfill the hedgehog stroker's customary aim, to have no obstacle drive sense awry. Get me by heart, it pleads, lest you repent the stanza garbled, the skim reader's ache for words now lost, the singing line that stays devoid of sense, for memory to grill, and every sad lacuna you should blame on hearts too flighty to get poems by. So, yeah, that's really a kind of lyrical response to Derrida's equally lyrical and strange reflections on the Hedgehog's poem. Let's see, I think I might skip the next one. Is that okay with you, Torgeir?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just,
okay.
Read what tickles your fancy. They're all good. Yeah?
Okay, I'll do number 39 now. That's a bit long. I can always jump back and forward, can't I? I tell you what, Val, would you like to read now? Would that be okay?
Okay.
Okay, right.
Hi, everybody. You're going to get a change of voice now. So I'm going to read another one of Chris's poems from the book. And this is called Bricoleur and Engineer. And there's a bit of an epigraph to start with, which I will read. The bricoleur is adept at performing a large number of diverse tasks, but unlike the engineer, he does not subordinate each of them to the availability of raw materials and tools conceived and procured for the purpose of the project. His universe of instruments is closed, and the rules of his game are always to make do with whatever is at hand. Mystical thought is therefore a kind of intellectual bricolage. The characteristic features of mythical thought is that it expresses itself by means of a heterogeneous repertoire which, even if extensive, is nevertheless limited. It has to use this repertoire, however, whatever the task in hand, because it has nothing else at its disposal. So here's the poem. Let none despise the humble bricoleur, that fixer-up with all his scrap-heap gear, nor overly admire the engineer, whose blueprints gleam where ad hoc notions blur. For it's by bricolage those amateur contractors get things up and running, steer inventive routes around the gadget sphere, and so provide the expert ingénieur with project kits in plenty. How begin such grand designs, if not by having those Heath Robinson constructions underpin the sweeping spans, the fine-tuned ratios, and all the high-tech miracles they spin from bits some crafty bricoleur once chose? Your low-tech myth inventor plays the game to rules that change as new stuff comes to hand. As plots combine and mytheme stocks expand, or jigsaw parts reshuffle in the frame, till a gestalt shift shows how just the same small box of tools can build the wonderland of myths, tales, customs, kinship systems, and, let's not forget, of Oedipus left lame and blind by savage fate. Admire the skill in plot design, the finely engineered encounters and reversals, if you will, but bear in mind how often they've appeared on time, yet scarcely managed to fulfill our needs for ends tied up or problems cleared. Who'll chide the engineer if she reverts to bricoleur once in a while, or nabs some cast-off piece of kit that's up for grabs and, trusting more to luck than skill, inserts it at a crucial point where it exerts a new unknown effect in all the labs and lecture halls where none think to keep tabs on such like junk or deign to bet their shirts on how it just might work. They often call it primitive, the kind of thought that runs such makeshift ways around perchance to fall on some quick problem fix. Yet, he who shuns the path of chance and bricolage may trawl for streamlined fish, but miss the tasty ones. Vice versa too. The bricoleur may slip, if gadgets work, into the engineer's accustomed thought grooves, where like-minded peers dictate one's research path and thereby tip the balance so that project teamsmanship wins out and group interests set the course for years. And any unprepared for shift of gears will strike the management as apt to trip the whole thing up. Take Levi Strauss, the first to side with mythic bricoleurs against conceptual engineers, yet so well versed in structuralist lore that everything's condensed into a few crisp mythemes, or, at worst, dragooned, anatomized and theory fenced. Ingénieur and bricoleur. They stake it out between them, that large territory where thought takes care to guard its home domain, to sort true claims from false, and so let reason scout its furthest boundaries. At which point, doubt may enter as to whether its report lacks evidential credence in the court of last appeal, where bricoleurs may flout all previous handings down. Their counsel pleads the hands-on knowledge case, one that entails an adept's willingness to follow leads way out or off the well-worn rails it travels when the cautionary needs of guild compliance prove a god that fails. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. This is late Derrida, and it's a point in his last decade, after 9/11, after the cataclysmic event and the sequel to that event, of 9/11, in which he started to explore the metaphor of autoimmunity, when systems begin to become, as it were, immune to themselves, to undermine their own defenses by an exorbitant or an excessive defensive reaction. And he came to see that as a very common characteristic of politics, global politics in the world today, this kind of immune reaction, this kind of excessive immune reaction, that creates internal defense mechanisms which undermine the system they're supposed to be defending. And he applied this, or he explored the implications of this metaphor in various contexts. So he says, this is the epigraph, and it's from an essay of his, a book of his, called Rogues. Between the immune and that which threatens it or runs counter to it, the relation is neither one of exteriority nor one of simple opposition or contradiction, I would say the same about the relationship between immunity and autoimmunity. Here's the poem, another sonnet. So many things may turn autoimmune. They self-inoculate on every scale, till at some point the safety systems fail, the organism ceases to fine-tune, its daily antibody counts balloon, and then, the climax to this sorry tale, the pullback call goes out to no avail as darkness falls in that last blink saloon. So likewise, nation-states self-immunize against some real or fancied foreign threat, which turns out their own death wish in disguise, while antivirus programs prove dead set on self-destruct, and hawkish types advise we stake our all on a wild gambler's bet. This is another villanelle. It has to do with this term iterability, which is quite important for Derrida. He wrote an essay about an English philosopher, J.L. Austin, who was the originator of a species of ordinary language philosophy, which had to do with speech acts, the way that we don't just say things with words, we don't just make statements or advance propositions, we do things, we promise, we get married, we threaten, we cajole, we encourage, we do lots of things which have practical real-world effects. And Austin, the English philosopher, Oxford philosopher, took a lot of time sorting out these speech acts and explaining the conditions for making a successful speech act. And he thought, and his disciples have thought, that you could specify what made a successful speech act. It meant saying what you meant and doing it in the right circumstances and being authorized to speak those words in that situation, and therefore achieving the end of the speech act, which is to bring about a change of situation, like getting married. Derrida very typically looks at marginal cases or borderline cases, problematic cases, if you like, where one or more of those conditions is not satisfied. And some of Austin's followers, his more conventional followers, have thought that was perverse of Derrida, to take the untypical as being in some sense the kind of case you should focus on. Derrida says, on the contrary, you learn far more about speech acts, about their applications, about the normal uses from looking at the abnormal uses or the failures, by concentrating on the marginal. Some mainstream philosophers have taken that view. Gilbert Ryle, for instance, said it's a bit like engineering, going back to engineering. One of the things that engineers do is bash and batter and stretch and strain and twist materials until they break down, until they show signs of fatigue and their properties break down. So Derrida's not completely out on a limb, but this is about the way that speech acts can go wrong. They can veer off course. They can malfunction, if you like. No end of, it's a villanelle, which is nice for reading out actually, because the repeated lines sort of gradually come into focus. No end of ways that speech acts veer off beam. They jump the tracks, swerve wide of first intent. Each variation brings a change of theme. Most speakers like to run a tight regime, but contexts change till who knows what they meant. No end of ways that speech acts veer off beam. Maybe it's some disturbance way upstream, some context shift that tweaked the way it went. Each variation brings a change of theme. Sense fixed by act of will, the speaker's dream, now fancied free of rocks to circumvent. No end of ways that speech acts veer off beam. As meanings go, we're lucky to redeem the gist of our own messages once sent. Each variation brings a change of theme. Junk vouloir dire and take one for the team. It's communal, that sense adaptive bent. No end of ways that speech acts veer off beam. Those lawyers and philosophers may scheme to fix the drift, but find their times ill spent. Each variation brings a change of theme. How think to shield the context-hungry seam from every sense-conferring accident? No end of ways that speech acts veer off beam. Each variation brings a change of theme.